Sorry, little one. This is the line for first-class passengers. You need to line up over there." Those cold words echoed through the airport lobby, stopping a small girl carrying a sparkling blue backpack and eyes full of hope. Maya Brooks, 7 years old, the first young ambassador of Continental Airlines, had been rejected, right at the place where she should have been most welcomed. But it was this seemingly small moment amidst the busy crowd of travelers that sparked a flame of change. It didn't just change Maya's first experience in the skies. It also awakened a veteran gate agent, Claire Mitchell, who thought she understood what fairness was. An unexpected journey began from there, a journey about courage, self-reflection, and a profound lesson on how we view the world and each other. This heartfelt story will take you through every emotion from pain and sorrow to hope and rebirth. If you believe that big changes always begin with small moments, join us on this special journey. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel to spread stories as warm and humane as this one to even more people. And now, let's begin the story when a 7-year-old girl teaches the world a lesson in kindness. The first-class ticket agent rejected the 8-year-old girl of color without realizing that she was the airline's young VIP guest. "Sorry, but you're in the wrong line. First class is only for first-class passengers." Claire Mitchell's cold voice rang out, cutting through the bustling noise of the terminal like a sharp knife. Having worked for Continental Airlines for 15 years, Claire had honed that voice, projecting firmness and professionalism, leaving no room for argument. In front of her stood a petite 8-year-old girl of color, clutching a blue backpack adorned with shimmering silver stars. Behind her thin-framed glasses, the girl's eyes were wide full of confusion. "But I'm allowed," the girl mumbled, her voice so soft it was nearly drowned out by the noise in the terminal. "Sweetie, please move over to the regular line." Claire gestured sharply toward the longer queue, where passengers of all races were patiently waiting. Some nearby passengers turned to look, some curious, others clearly annoyed. What Claire Mitchell didn't know at that moment was that this brief exchange would mark the beginning of one of the most humbling and awakening days of her career. Forcing her to confront things she had long avoided, she couldn't have predicted that this small girl with glasses would completely change everything Claire believed about privilege, unconscious bias, and how easily people are influenced by preconceived notions, even in the most everyday situations. The incident took place on a Tuesday morning at Gate 27B, later to be reported by the media across the country, but not in the way anyone could have anticipated. 2 hours earlier, before the sun had even risen, Claire's alarm clock in her small Highland Park apartment had gone off. It was 5:15 a.m., just like it had been for the past 15 years. At 57 years old, Claire took pride in the consistency of her routine. Life had taught her that stability was almost sacred, and any sudden changes made her deeply uncomfortable. Her small, one-bedroom apartment in the northern suburbs of Chicago was neat and organized, reflecting her meticulous nature. Everything was in its place, leaving no room for surprises. On the wall hung old photographs of her late parents next to the plaque. Employee of the year 2011, her greatest pride in her career at Continental Airlines. Claire had never been married and had no children. To her, Continental Airlines was her family, and its rules were sacred. Her mornings followed a precise ritual. A 7-minute shower, drying her silver-tipped auburn hair in the same bob style she'd worn for 20 years. Light makeup and donning her crisp uniform navy blazer. White shirt, knee-length blue skirt, the Golden Wings badge pinned to her chest reflected the bathroom light as she checked her appearance one last time. Another day of serving the friendly skies, Claire whispered to herself the mantra that had gotten her through thousands of mornings like this one. The drive to O'Hare International Airport was peaceful in the dim early morning light. Claire liked that quiet, just her and the NPR morning news show for company. The news that day focused on politics and the economy. But Claire's mind drifted toward Gate 27B preparing for Flight 1372 to San Francisco, a premium route filled with business and first-class passengers. These were the passengers Claire preferred punctual, professional, and rule-abiding. They knew the regulations and caused no trouble. Unlike families with small children or people who rarely flew, always fumbling and slowing down the process, Claire enjoyed the order and predictability. By 6:30 a.m., Claire had parked in the employee lot, swiped her security badge, and entered the break room. A few familiar colleagues nodded in greeting, but Claire wasn't particularly interested in socializing. In the corner of the room, Samuel Carter, a longtime colleague, was pouring coffee. His large frame took up nearly all the space in the small room. At 62, Samuel was one of the few people who had been at Continental longer than Claire. "Good morning, sunshine." Samuel chuckled warmly, his voice carrying a slight southern twang, even though he had lived in Chicago for over 30 years. "Ready for San Francisco." Claire gave a small smile. "Good morning, Samuel. I'm ready. I've already looked over the passenger list. First class is packed today," she added in a flat tone. Samuel shook his head with a laugh. "Always prepared. Some of us wait until we get to the gate to check the list." "That's way too inefficient," Claire replied, pouring herself a black coffee with no sugar. "I like knowing what I'm up against." Samuel lowered his voice. "Did you hear they're launching the Young Ambassadors program today?" Claire furrowed her brow. "Young ambassadors?" Samuel repeated. "It's a new initiative from marketing. They're selecting kids from various backgrounds to experience premium services and represent the brand." Samuel. Carter shrugged lightly, his voice soft. "It's just a campaign for image building. By the way, I hear there's going to be a kid on your flight today." Claire Mitchell furrowed her brow. "I haven't seen any announcement. It must have ended up in the spam folder." Samuel chuckled, taking a sip of his coffee. "Just giving you a heads up. I hear they're even sending a photographer to meet you in San Francisco, so it might get a little noisy." Claire grimaced. She always worked to avoid any chaos. She reminded herself to check her inbox again. She wasn't sure how she had missed the announcement. Continental had always been known for its tight communication. "I'll check the updates," Claire said decisively, finishing her coffee in 2 quick gulps. "We should head to the gate. I like to have everything sorted at least 45 minutes before boarding." Samuel squinted and teased. "Yes, ma'am. Just don't let it be 44 minutes before you're on edge." The two walked through the bright airport lobby, while Claire's mind started to rearrange her plans for the morning. The San Francisco flight was scheduled to begin boarding at 8:30 and take off at 9:15. She would make sure everything went according to plan. Prioritize passengers needing assistance, then first class followed by premium economy, and finally the rest in economy class. In order. No exceptions. No special treatment outside of the airline's rules. It was this principle that had built Claire Mitchell's reputation for steel efficiency at O'Hare. What Claire didn't expect was that a small girl was about to completely disrupt the neatly arranged world she had built. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, 8-year-old Maya Brooks had been awake since 4:30 a.m., too excited to sleep. Today was the big day she had been waiting for, ever since receiving the letter from Continental Airlines 3 weeks ago that she had been chosen as the airline's first ever young ambassador. Mom, Dad, is it time to go? Yet? Maya bounced on her parents' bed, shouting with excitement. Daniel Brooks, her dad, groggily turned over to check the clock. Sweetie, it's only a little past 4:30. Your flight isn't until 9, but the letter said we need to be at the airport 90 minutes early. Maya repeated her glasses, slipping down her nose as she continued to jump. Lauren Brooks reached out from under the covers and patted her daughter's hand. We'll be fine, honey. But right now, we all need to sleep a little more. Maya sighed deeply, then finally settled down between her parents. I can't sleep. I'm too nervous. What if I forget my speech? Daniel pulled his daughter closer and comforted her. You've practiced it 100 times. You'll remember. What if I get too nervous and forget to thank Uncle Price? Maya, fretted Lauren gently. Interrupted, breathe deeply, just like I've taught you. Maya closed her eyes tightly, took a deep breath, and exhaled slowly, a technique she'd learned from a therapist to manage the mild anxiety she had been diagnosed with at age 6. Being selected for this program was beyond Maya's wildest dreams. Her essay about seeing the world through new eyes had been encouraged by her teacher to enter the contest, and she never imagined it would touch the hearts of the Continental Selection Committee. You're such a great girl, Lauren whispered, gently stroking Maya's curly hair. Now, choose your favorite book, and I'll read it to you while we get ready. An hour later, the Brooks family sat together at their simple breakfast table. Their small apartment in the Bronzeville neighborhood on Chicago's South Side was filled with books, music, and artwork testaments to Daniel's career as a history teacher and Lauren's job as a children's librarian. Remember, Daniel said, adjusting Maya's white polka-dotted purple dress and matching headband. When we get to the airport, a Continental representative will meet us at the check-in desk. They'll give you your special young ambassador badge and escort us through security. Maya nodded carefully, reviewing the schedule in her mind. Then we'll go to gate 27B and wait for flight 1372 to San Francisco. I'll board with the first-class passengers, even though my seat is in premium economy. When we get there will be a photographer to take pictures for Continental's website and social media. Exactly, Lauren confirmed, clearing the plates. And remember, today, you're not just representing yourself, but also many other kids, those who've never seen themselves represented in high-end ads. I remember Maya said, seriously, Uncle Jonathan Price said I was chosen, because my essay showed how important it is for every child to feel welcome wherever they are. Jonathan Price, the new vice president for diversity and community engagement at Continental, had personally called the Brooks family to share the good news. As a former teacher, he immediately resonated with the feelings Maya had expressed in her essay, the sense of sometimes being invisible in spaces not designed with her in mind. On the way to O'Hare Airport, Maya Brooks couldn't stop chattering about all the things she was excited to see in San Francisco: the Golden Gate Bridge, Alcatraz, and the old streetcars. This would be Maya's first flight, her first trip outside the Midwest. For a girl who loved reading about distant lands, this opportunity felt like a magical dream. As promised, a Continental representative was waiting at the check-in counter. A young woman named Brianna Lee approached with a warm smile, carrying a special lanyard for Maya. "Here's your young ambassador badge," Brianna said, placing the Continental-branded lanyard around Maya's neck. "Today, you are our honorary guest. Maya stood up straighter, her eyes shining with pride as she touched the bold badge with her name on it. The staff at Gate 27B has been notified about your arrival. Brianna explained to Daniel and Lauren Brooks. Maya will board with the first-class passengers to fully experience the premium journey. Will there be strawberries? Maya asked, recalling details from the program's materials. Brianna laughed. Of course, there will also be warm towels and plenty of other first-class services. The flight attendants have been instructed to treat you like a VIP. After completing the security check, the Brooks family headed toward Gate 27B. Along the way, Maya practiced her special greeting. Hello, I'm Maya Brooks, the young ambassador of Continental Airlines. It's nice to meet you. The friendly smile she received helped ease some of her nervousness. As they neared the boarding area, Daniel checked the time. It was just right. The boarding process was about to begin. I need to use the restroom for a minute, Lauren said. James, could you take Maya to the gate first? I'll catch up with you. Can I go by myself, Dad? Maya eagerly asked, wanting to show her independence. I see the sign over there. The sign that read 27B was only about 30 meters away. Daniel hesitated. Maya was almost 8, and while she was mature for her age, he still felt a bit concerned. But this area had already been secured by security and was in his sight. All right. He nodded. You go straight to the counter and tell them who you are. I'll stay here and watch until I see you talking to the staff. Maya beamed, adjusting her glasses and standing tall, straightening the young ambassador badge around her neck. I'll be very professional. Of course, my little Princess Daniel smiled, his eyes shining with pride as he watched Maya walk ahead, her blue backpack with star designs swaying behind her. He remembered feeling emotional. Just recently, she had been too shy to even order food at a restaurant. But Daniel didn't realize that at Gate 27B, Maya was about to face a difficult situation. A small misunderstanding that would soon lead to much bigger changes than they could have imagined. Meanwhile, Claire Mitchell was enjoying the feeling of everything being under control. Gate 27B was perfectly prepared. The boarding announcement was ready. The passenger list was fully checked. Everything was running according to plan, until Claire noticed a small figure heading toward the first-class line. A young girl of color in a purple dress, wearing glasses and carrying a bright blue backpack. There was no adult accompanying her. Immediately, Claire's professional instincts went into alert mode. According to the rules, children must have an adult guardian when entering the priority line. As Maya approached the velvet rope separating first class from the regular line, Claire stepped forward to block her. Sorry, sweetie. This is for first-class passengers only. The girl stopped looking up at Claire, about to explain. But sweetie, please move over to the other line. Claire interrupted, pointing firmly toward the longer queue. Maya didn't rush to leave. She took hold of the badge hanging around her neck, her voice soft but sure. I'm Maya Brooks, the young ambassador of Continental Airlines. I'm allowed to board with first class. Claire raised an eyebrow. Young ambassador. She hadn't heard of such a program. She quickly ran through the passenger list and internal announcements in her mind. Nothing about it. Maybe this was just a mistake, or worse, an attempt to sneak into the priority area. I don't know anything about this young ambassador program. Claire replied, her tone colder. Are you traveling alone? Where are your parents? Maya vaguely pointed behind her. My dad is on his way. He told me to go ahead. By this time, some first-class passengers had begun to notice the exchange. Claire felt uncomfortable being the center of attention. Without an adult or a first-class boarding pass, you'll need to wait in the economy section. Claire emphasized, "When your dad arrives with your boarding pass, we can sort this out." Maya Brooks' face fell, her earlier confidence now fragile. But Uncle Price said she tried to explain. "I don't know who Mr. Price is." Claire Mitchell interrupted coldly. "I'm in charge of this flight, and you need to follow the rules." She pointed firmly again toward the regular boarding area. A brief look of confusion flashed in Maya's eyes, her lips trembling slightly. She tightened her grip on the straps of her backpack, nodded quietly, and stepped back from the first-class line. Claire felt a flicker of something in her chest, though not quite regret. It wasn't the usual resolve she felt. Still, she reminded herself, rules are rules. If there was truly a special program, the child's parents should be present to explain clearly. Children can't just walk into the priority area and expect to be given special treatment. Based on a vague claim, Claire returned to the counter, silently making a note to check whether the so-called Young Ambassador program actually existed. It might have been a misunderstanding. Perhaps the family had been misinformed about the boarding process. In her 15 years at Continental, Claire had seen plenty of schemes to jump the boarding line or upgrade to first class. What Claire didn't realize was that Samuel Carter, standing at the boarding pass scanner, had witnessed the entire exchange. His expression grew solemn, his eyes reflecting concern. Meanwhile, Daniel and Lauren Brooks had just left the restroom when Daniel's phone rang with a message from an unfamiliar number. "Mr. Brooks, this is Jonathan Price from Continental Airlines. The staff at Gate 27B has reported a possible misunderstanding regarding your daughter Maya's Young Ambassador status. I've contacted the gate supervisor immediately. Please make your way to Gate 27B as soon as possible. We sincerely apologize for any inconvenience." After reading the message, Daniel's heart pounded in his chest. "There's something wrong at the gate," he said to Lauren, handing her the phone to read. Without hesitation, both of them hurried toward Gate 27B. When they arrived, Daniel quickly scanned the area for Maya, his heart tightening when he saw her sitting alone on a bench near the economy area. Her small shoulders slumped, her eyes fixed on the floor. Maya Daniel called out, rushing toward her, "What's going on, sweetheart?" At the sound of her father's voice, Maya looked up, her eyes lighting up with relief. She said, "I couldn't stand in the first-class area," Maya mumbled. She said she didn't know about the Young Ambassador program. A wave of anger welled up in Daniel. As a black man in America, he was all too familiar with that feeling, the doubt of one's worth simply because of their appearance. But the pain was even greater, knowing his daughter had to experience it. "Where's that employee?" Lauren asked, her voice tenser than usual, but still controlled. Maya pointed toward the counter, where Claire Mitchell was absorbed in checking her documents, unaware of the storm that was about to hit. Daniel took a deep breath, forcing himself to stay calm. Over his career as a teacher at a diverse high school in Chicago, he'd learned that moments like these required calmness, not outbursts. Together, they walked toward the counter. Claire looked up, offering a polite, mechanical smile, the same one she gave to any passenger with a question. "How can I assist you today?" she asked. "I'm Daniel Brooks." Daniel said slowly, "This is my wife Lauren and our daughter Maya. She's the first young ambassador of Continental Airlines chosen personally by Mr. Jonathan Price. We were instructed to come here to process Maya's boarding with the first-class passengers. But it seems there's been a misunderstanding." Claire's face remained emotionless, but her hands gripped her tablet tightly. I have not received any notifications about a young ambassador program, Claire replied, trying to keep her voice calm. Additionally, children are required to be accompanied by an adult in the boarding area. Lauren then produced the lanyard with the Continental Airlines logo that Maya was wearing around her neck. She has an official Young Ambassador badge. We also received an email confirmation, a welcome package, and even a call from Mr. Price himself. A moment of hesitation flickered across Claire's face, but she quickly regained her composure. I haven't received any official instructions to allow special boarding, Claire said firmly. If you'd like, I can call a customer service representative to assist. What's going on here? A deep voice came from behind Claire. It was Samuel Carter, who had walked up to the counter. His face was unreadable, but his stance was stern, showing clear concern. These passengers are claiming that their daughter is part of a Young Ambassador program. But I have not been notified, Claire explained. Samuel furrowed his brow as though piecing the situation together. You mean the Young Ambassadors program, the one the company sent an urgent email about last night. The big diversity initiative of the year. His voice was steady, but his eyes held an unspoken understanding. Claire's chest tightened. I didn't receive any email. She stammered, check your spam folder, Samuel suggested, then turned to the Brooks family with a friendly smile. Are you Maya? We've been looking forward to meeting you. He extended his hand. Maya hesitated for a moment, then shyly placed her small hand in his. I'm Samuel Carter, the gate supervisor. Samuel introduced himself, his deep voice calm. On behalf of Continental Airlines, I apologize for this misunderstanding. We are honored to have Maya as the airline's first young ambassador. Maya's face lit up slightly, though she still glanced at Claire Mitchell with a hesitant look in her eyes. Let me double-check the situation, Samuel added, walking over to the computer that Claire was using. With just a few quick actions, he found the cause. Here it is. The announcement about the Young Ambassador program was actually in the system, but due to a small error, it wasn't updated in today's passenger list. He looked up and met Claire's eyes. It seems like a simple oversight. He said, his voice steady, but with a hint of meaning. Claire felt her face flush with embarrassment and frustration. How could she have known about this brand-new program when she hadn't received any official information? I apologize for the inconvenience. Claire said, her voice stiff. If the family would like, we can begin boarding the first-class group now. Daniel Brooks stared at Claire for a long moment, his gaze controlled but sharp. Thank you, he said evenly. Maya, are you ready to be the young ambassador now? Maya nodded, but her earlier excitement had faded considerably. She clutched her mother's hand tightly, no longer eager to show the same independence she had earlier. As the Brooks family walked toward the first-class boarding area, Samuel remained by the counter and turned to Claire. What was that all about? He asked softly. Claire pretended to be busy with some paperwork and replied quickly, I didn't get any notification about this special program. Samuel narrowed his eyes. The notification was sent to all staff. Claire, but even if you didn't receive it, the girl is wearing an official badge, right there, kids trying to sneak into first class. Isn't anything new. Claire snapped, her irritation evident. You know that, Samuel. Is that so? Samuel asked, his gaze fixed on Claire's face. Or is it that only certain children get doubted more in your eyes? The question hit Claire like a punch to her self-respect. You're being unfair to me, Claire snapped back. I would handle any child the same way if they wandered into the first-class line, Samuel sighed. Maybe. But what you need to ask yourself is why you dismissed the girl's explanation so quickly, without even looking closely at the badge she was wearing. Before Claire could respond, a commotion at the entrance of the gate caught both of their attention. A group of people appeared, led by a well-dressed black man in a suit whom Claire immediately recognized from internal memos. It was Jonathan Price, the Vice President of Diversity and Community Engagement at Continental Airlines. Beside him were a photographer and several other company leaders. "The welcoming team is here," Samuel whispered. "I'm going to greet them." As Samuel walked away, Claire felt a rising sense of unease. This situation was clearly more serious than just a minor boarding mistake. She turned back to her desk, quickly opened her email inbox and checked the spam folder. And, sure enough, as expected, there was an unread email with a clear subject line. Important Special Guidelines for Young Ambassador Program. Flight 1372. Claire's stomach clenched as she skimmed the contents. All the information was clearly laid out. Maya Brooks, 7 years old, chosen as the first young ambassador from a nationwide essay contest, needing special attention at Gate 27B. The email even included a picture of the very girl she had just rejected minutes before, wearing glasses and with a serious expression. The realization of what she had just caused hit Claire like a cold wave, but she told herself it wasn't intentional. She hadn't been notified beforehand. Surely she could explain herself. Just as that thought crossed her mind, she heard someone call her name. Claire looked up and saw Samuel signaling for her to come over to the group of newly arrived guests. She took a deep breath, straightened her jacket, forced a professional smile, and walked over. "Claire, let me introduce you to Mr. Jonathan Price, our Vice President of Diversity and Community Engagement." Samuel introduced. The tall, dignified man extended his hand to shake Claire's. "Hello, Ms. Mitchell. I've heard about the little mix-up regarding the Young Ambassador program." "Yes, sir," Claire replied, trying to remain calm. "I apologize for the issue. It seems I didn't receive the email with the guidelines for this flight until—" Jonathan Price gently interrupted her. "Actually, I'd like to discuss this privately with you. Could we go into the back office?" His voice remained polite, but there was something in his gaze and tone that made Claire's hard exterior begin to crack. She silently nodded and led him to the small office behind the counter. As the door closed, Mr. Price's polite smile faded. "Ms. Mitchell, let's get straight to the point." He began, his voice low and firm. "We're facing a very serious situation. The Brooks family has every right to feel disappointed. Maya was chosen to represent Continental's commitment to ensuring that all passengers, regardless of age, background, or skin color, are welcomed equally." Sir Claire quickly interjected, "I assure you that I never intended to make anyone feel discriminated against." "I really didn't know about that program," Claire Mitchell spoke up, her voice softening. "When a child without an adult escort approaches the priority line according to the rules I have to Ms. Mitchell Jonathan Price," gently but firmly interrupted. "I reviewed the footage at the gate. At no point did you check Maya's ambassador badge or ask for a clearer explanation from the girl. You simply dismissed her and told her to leave." Claire's face flushed with embarrassment. "I was just following the protocol for children without an adult escort, sir." She tried to justify herself. Jonathan tilted his head, his gaze sharp. "Then doesn't that protocol include checking the documents, the credentials the passengers present?" The question echoed in the small room, leaving Claire speechless. The truth was, at that moment she hadn't noticed the badge hanging around Maya's neck. All Claire had seen was a lone child standing in the wrong spot. What concerns me most, Jonathan continued, is that this incident threatens to undermine the very goal that the Young Ambassador program was meant to achieve from the start. We chose Maya because her essay described so movingly the feelings of children, particularly children of color, when they feel overlooked in spaces that aren't designed for them. And this morning, unfortunately, became a living proof of that. The weight of his words hit Claire squarely in the chest. She began to realize that this was not just a small mistake. It was a potential media nightmare for both Continental and herself. So, what should I do now? Claire asked, her voice much smaller. Jonathan watched her for a long moment before responding. That depends partly on you, Ms. Mitchell. The Brooks family has chosen not to ask Continental to discipline you, a gracious decision. In fact, Mr. Brooks even suggested that this could be an opportunity to learn rather than to punish. Claire nodded, slightly unsure of how to react. My proposal is this. Jonathan continued. You will continue your duties at the gate for this flight. When boarding begins, you will personally welcome Maya as our young ambassador. When you arrive in San Francisco, you will attend the welcoming ceremony and take photos with Maya. This will be our way of demonstrating Continental's commitment to face our mistakes and turn them into an opportunity for growth. Claire immediately understood that this wasn't a suggestion. It was an order. Yes, sir. I will do that, she replied, trying to maintain her professionalism. Jonathan moved toward the door, but paused, turning back to add, one more thing. Mitchell, I hope you will take the next few days to seriously reflect on what happened today. Ask yourself if there were any assumptions, any biases that influenced your response to Maya. When we return to Chicago, I want to hear your thoughts so we can discuss how to improve the company's training program. With that, he left, leaving Claire to face the thoughts she had avoided throughout her career. Outside the gate area, Claire regained her usual composure. Passengers traveling with children or requiring special assistance, please proceed to the priority line. Her voice rang out clearly over the intercom. But inside, everything was in turmoil. Her conversation with Jonathan Price still echoed in her mind. In the special waiting area, the Brooks family and Maya were surrounded by Continental leadership and photographers. Maya seemed to have regained her spirits, happily showing off her ambassador badge and answering questions from the group. Claire's voice continued. Now boarding first-class passengers and our special young ambassador. As the crowd began moving toward the boarding pass scanner, Jonathan Price led Maya and her parents at the front. Flashing lights from the cameras went off continuously. Maya stepped up to Claire, holding her badge up to the scanner. Claire bent down to Maya's level, forcing a warm smile. Welcome aboard, Ms. Brooks. Continental Airlines is honored to have you as our first young ambassador. We hope you have a wonderful flight to San Francisco. The words had been prepared for her by Jonathan, and Claire repeated them exactly as instructed. They left her lips not completely natural, but she tried to infuse them with the little sincerity she still felt inside. Maya looked up at her, her gaze both serious and probing, as if trying to compare the woman welcoming her now with the one who had coldly dismissed her earlier. After a moment, Maya nodded, replying with the courtesy she had been coached to show. Thank you for the welcome. Behind her, Daniel Brooks observed Claire with a calm, steady gaze, not with hostility nor forgiveness, but with a quiet acknowledgement, Lauren Brooks maintained a colder expression like a protective shield of a mother's instincts. As the Brooks family walked into the jet bridge, Samuel Carter approached Claire, lowering his voice to ask, "Are you all right?" "I'm fine," Claire replied curtly, continuing to scan boarding passes for other passengers. "Claire," Samuel said softly, "I've known you for 15 years. Claire, you have many qualities, but fine, right now, isn't one of them," Samuel Carter said quietly. Claire stopped looking up at Samuel with a look that revealed something very rare in her, something fragile, almost vulnerable. "I didn't mean to," Claire started, but she couldn't finish the sentence. Samuel nodded in understanding. "I get it, but sometimes intentions aren't as important as the consequences. Group 2 passengers, please prepare for boarding." Claire's voice rang out decisively, ending the conversation. For the rest of the boarding process, Claire worked like a machine. Every ticket scan, every greeting was perfectly executed as precise as clockwork. But inside her mind was a storm. For years, she had prided herself on always doing things by the book, maintaining order. Yet it was precisely that mechanical adherence to rules that had led to today's mistake. Jonathan Price's words echoed in her head. Ask yourself what assumptions influenced how you reacted to Maya. Claire had always prided herself on being fair. To her, passengers were simply names on a list seat, numbers, boarding groups, no differentiation by race, age, or social class. And yet, this morning, something had happened that didn't align with the image she had of herself. Why didn't she stop to properly look at the badge Maya was wearing? Why did she hastily dismiss the girl's explanation? Those questions lingered with Claire as she continued through the boarding process, and even as the plane began to taxi away from Gate 27B, for the first time in her 15 years with Continental Airlines, Claire Mitchell was not only questioning a single action, but also the entire mindset that had shaped the way she interacted with passengers all these years. It was an uncomfortable feeling for someone who had always believed she was doing the right thing. At 36,000 feet, somewhere over Nebraska, Maya Brooks was experiencing her first flight, filled with all the excitement a young child could muster. The initial disappointment at the gate slowly faded, replaced by excitement as Continental had prepared a special experience for her. A mocktail and a glass, warm towels, premium snacks, and even an invitation to the cockpit before takeoff. From her seat in the premium economy section just behind first class, Maya could watch the entire journey while still staying close to her parents. She carefully wrote down every detail in the young ambassador's journal provided just for her. Her natural curiosity quickly overcame the confusion she'd felt earlier, and now she was fully immersed in her new role. "How's the flight, sweetie?" Lauren Brooks asked, smiling as she watched her daughter sketch the clouds outside the window. "It's amazing," Maya replied, her eyes still fixed on her drawing. "Mom, did you know that the white streaks behind the airplane are called contrails? They're formed by ice crystals from the engine exhaust." Daniel laughed. "Who taught you that?" "The pilot told me when I went into the cockpit. He said I asked better questions than most adults," Maya said proudly. Hearing his daughter speak with such confidence eased some of Daniel's lingering anger from the incident at the gate. His daughter, with her resilient spirit, always knew how to make him proud. However, as a teacher, Daniel knew that today's incident was a valuable opportunity to teach his daughter a deep lesson. "Maya," he began gently, "I want to talk to you about what happened at the gate earlier." Maya paused, the pencil still hovering above the page. "You're talking about when the lady didn't believe I was the ambassador, right?" Yes. How did that make you feel? Maya thought for a moment, then spoke. I was sad. I felt small, like I wasn't important enough for anyone to listen to. She adjusted her glasses, a familiar gesture whenever she was deep in thought. It reminded me of when I raised my hand in class, and the teacher still didn't look at me, even though I knew the answer. Lauren exchanged a glance with Daniel, their eyes sinking with the familiar pain, the pain of witnessing their child face prejudice so early. What you need to understand, Daniel continued, is that sometimes adults make judgments too quickly based on what they see, not who the person really is inside. It's wrong and unfair. But if we understand why it happens, we'll know how to face it better. You mean because I'm black? Maya asked directly, her eyes clear but sharp. Daniel nodded slowly. Yes, sweetie. Sometimes people have unconscious biases about who belongs in certain spaces. When what they see doesn't match their expectations, they feel uncomfortable, even react negatively. It's unfair. Maya frowned. You and Mom always taught me to judge people by their actions and words, not their appearance. And that is completely right. Lauren smiled gently, patting her daughter's shoulder. The world isn't always fair, but that doesn't stop us from trying to make it better. By stepping into spaces where people don't expect us, by showing them that children like you deserve to be everywhere, even in first class. Maya nodded thoughtfully, then asked softly, Do you think the gate agent was a bad person? Daniel Brooks paused for a moment before answering. No, I don't think she's a bad person. I think she made a mistake. Sometimes good people make mistakes because they don't double-check the assumptions in their minds. What matters is whether they learn from their mistakes. Just like when I thought Mason didn't like me because he never talked to me. Maya recalled, but really, he was just shy. Exactly, Daniel smiled. It takes time and an open heart to understand that. Up in first class, a few rows ahead, Claire Mitchell was meticulously reviewing the passenger list for the return flight. On the outside, she had regained her usual professional demeanor, but inside the reminders from Jonathan Price still lingered, unsettling her every thought. She hadn't meant to hurt anyone. She was just following the familiar protocols. And yet Maya's hurt expression when she was rejected haunted her. A small noise in the aisle caught Claire's attention. Maya, with her survey in hand, was confidently walking through the rows of first-class seats, introducing herself. Hello, I'm Maya Brooks, the young ambassador of Continental Airlines. I'm conducting a survey on the flight experience. Would you mind answering a few questions? Maya's maturity, modeled after the flight attendants, brought warm smiles from the passengers. Many were eager to participate, answering questions about comfort, service quality, and their overall impressions of the flight. Claire was surprised to see that not only was the girl not causing any inconvenience, but she was actually making the first-class cabin more lively, connecting strangers with one another. Claire's and Maya's eyes met by chance. After a brief hesitation, Maya decided to approach Claire. Would you like to participate in my survey? Maya asked, her voice calm but betraying a hint of caution. Claire felt all eyes around her, focusing on her. Some passengers had likely witnessed the incident at the gate earlier. Of course, Claire responded, trying to keep her voice friendly. Maya handed her the survey. The questions were neatly printed with cute drawings in the margins, added by Maya herself. As Claire filled out the answers, she wondered what Maya's essay had said, the one that had convinced the Continental leadership. Thank you for participating in my survey, Maya said, giving a polite bow. Claire returned the survey, preparing to walk away, when Maya unexpectedly stopped, her expression serious. "Ms. Mitchell, may I ask you one more question unrelated to the survey?" "Of course," Claire responded, feeling a bit tense. "Why didn't you believe me at the gate?" The simple question struck straight at Claire's core. She had prepared herself for questioning from her superiors, even for possible reprimand from the Brooks family. But she never expected it would be Maya asking with pure curiosity and no trace of anger. A flurry of reasons flashed through Claire's mind. She hadn't received an official notice, she was just following protocol, she couldn't verify it at that moment. All of them were true, but now they felt so small in the face of the child's innocent gaze, I made a mistake. Claire admitted the words unfamiliar on her tongue. I relied on assumptions instead of really listening and looking closely. I was wrong, and I'm sorry. Maya was silent for a moment, as if processing the response. My dad says, she began slowly, everyone can make mistakes. What matters is what you learn from them. Your dad is very wise. Claire smiled, feeling a little relief in her heart. My dad's a teacher. Maya explained as if that said it all. He also says that mistakes are like opportunities, but wearing an uncomfortable suit. Claire chuckled softly at the adorable phrasing. That's a very good way of looking at it. Thank you for participating in my survey. Maya resumed her role as the young ambassador, politely bowing again. I wish you a pleasant flight. Then she continued walking, leaving Claire sitting there silently watching her. The very girl Claire had hastily dismissed earlier that morning was now walking confidently through first class, spreading warmth and joy to everyone around her. A thought suddenly flickered in Claire's mind. Maybe it wasn't Maya who was in the wrong place at gate 27B. Maybe it was her own perspective that needed shifting. That thought left Claire uneasy, but at the same time it opened something new and unfamiliar within her. For the rest of the flight, as the plane soared through the American sky, Claire Mitchell felt herself drifting into uncharted territory. Not the unfamiliar lands below, but the deep recesses inside herself. Maya stepped up to the microphone, her small figure standing tall with a sense of confidence that radiated beyond her years. The crowd fell silent as she adjusted her glasses and took a deep breath, holding the young ambassador's journal close to her chest. Good afternoon. Maya began, her voice clear and steady. My name is Maya Brooks, and I am honored to be the first young ambassador for Continental Airlines. There was a pause as she looked around at the gathered crowd, the flashing cameras, the curious eyes, but she didn't falter. She smiled and continued. I wrote my essay about the feeling of being overlooked, especially for children like me who sometimes feel like we don't belong in certain spaces. We may not have the same opportunities to experience things like flying first class or being treated like VIPs, but I believe that everyone, no matter their age, race, or background, should be welcomed and respected, especially when they are trying something new. Her words were simple but powerful, touching the hearts of everyone in the room. As she spoke, her gaze occasionally met the faces of the people around her, her parents, the leaders of Continental, and the media covering the event. She felt their support, their belief in her. Maya continued. Continental Airlines has shown me that even a child's voice can make a difference. And by being here today, I hope I can help others feel that they belong too. The room was silent for a moment, as if everyone was taking in the weight of her words. Then, as if on cue, the crowd erupted into applause. Maya stood still for a moment, taking in the warmth of their approval, a sense of pride swelling within her. She wasn't just a young girl, she was a symbol of possibility of change. As she stepped back from the microphone, Jonathan Price approached her with a broad smile. "That was beautiful, Maya. You've truly inspired us all." Claire, standing a few steps behind the family, felt a wave of emotion wash over her. She watched Maya with a deep sense of admiration. This young girl had spoken not only of her personal experience, but had spoken for so many others who had felt invisible, unheard. As the ceremony continued, Claire couldn't help but reflect on the day's events. She had watched Maya grow from the hesitant, misunderstood child at the gate to the confident, articulate young ambassador standing before the crowd, and in doing so, she had unknowingly guided Claire through a process of self-reflection, challenging her own assumptions and biases. For the first time, Claire saw the impact of her actions not just on herself, but on the people she interacted with. It wasn't enough to simply follow the rules. True understanding came from listening, questioning, and being willing to evolve. The afternoon wore on, but Claire's mind remained fixed on the journey that had brought them here. She had thought the lesson was about Maya, but it turned out it had been just as much about her. As the ceremony drew to a close and the crowd began to disperse, Jonathan came over to her once more. "Thank you for everything." "Claire," he said, his voice sincere, "you've handled this well, and I appreciate how you've taken responsibility." Claire nodded, a quiet sense of relief settling over her. "Thank you, Mr. Price. I still have a lot to learn, but I'm ready to continue." Jonathan smiled. "I know you are. We all are." And as Claire watched the family walk toward the exit, Maya laughing and chatting with her parents, she couldn't help but feel grateful for the mistake for the lesson and for the young ambassador who had reminded her that sometimes the greatest growth comes from the moments that challenge us most. Maya stepped up to the microphone holding the note from her young ambassador's journal. Despite her soft voice, the entire crowd immediately fell silent to listen. "When I go to fancy places with my parents, sometimes people don't see me," Maya began. "They talk over my head or act like I don't belong in places like fancy restaurants or museums. But I'm a person too, with thoughts, feelings, and questions about the world. I dream of a world where every child feels welcome, where no one has to prove they deserve to be in beautiful places. That's the world I want to help build, with my role as Continental Airlines' first young ambassador." The simplicity and sincerity in Maya's words struck Claire Mitchell silent. She had spoken directly to the heart of what had happened that morning at Gate 27B. Claire had not truly seen Maya. She had subconsciously pushed the girl aside simply because of the assumptions deeply rooted in her mind. The applause erupted across the room as Maya finished her speech. Jonathan Price turned back to the microphone and announced, "We will continue to expand the Young Ambassador program, selecting children from across the country to experience premium service and share their unique perspectives." And now, he continued, his eyes sparkling, "I invite Ms. Claire Mitchell, the gate agent from Chicago, to present the honorary wings to Maya Brooks." Claire froze for a moment. This wasn't in the plan. Her heart raced as Jonathan handed her a small box, inside of which was a pair of golden wings similar to the Continental employee badge, but specially designed for children, engraved with the words, "Young Ambassador Claire," stepped forward, kneeling down to Maya's level. She knew dozens of cameras were pointing their lenses at them, and the eyes of Maya's parents were fixed on her. "Dear Miss," Brooks Claire spoke into the microphone, making sure her voice was clear. "On behalf of Continental Airlines, It is my honor to present you with these young ambassador wings. You have reminded us that seeing the world through fresh eyes is not just a journey of childhood, but a valuable lesson for all of us." Claire gently pinned the wings to Maya's dress, then extended her hand. "Thank you for teaching us how to look more closely, listen more attentively, and welcome every passenger with the respect they truly deserve." Maya shook Claire's hand with surprising seriousness for a child. Then, unexpectedly, she stepped forward and gave Claire a gentle hug. In that moment, the young girl whispered so quietly that the microphones didn't catch it. "Thank you for learning from your mistake." The sound of cameras clicking echoed through the room, capturing the image of the gate agent hugging the young ambassador, a moment that would later appear in all of Continental Airlines' training materials and media campaigns. As the ceremony concluded, Jonathan Price approached. "Claire, well done, Miss Mitchell." That was very sincere. That was the real emotion. Claire replied, surprised at how natural it had felt. "I truly meant it." Jonathan nodded, his gaze warmer than before. "Perhaps today's incident has more value than we initially thought. Claire, would you be willing to share this experience in the new diversity and inclusion training sessions when we return to Chicago?" Had it been the Claire of earlier that morning, she would have found a way to decline, citing being too busy or the situation not being suitable. But Claire was standing here now, the one who had just pinned the wings on Maya, and she nodded slowly. "Yes, sir. I think I'm ready." "Excellent. Real-life experience always holds more power than any dry lecture," Jonathan said, patting her gently on the shoulder. "And you've shown the courage necessary to face reality instead of avoiding it." Jonathan left to coordinate the next part of the ceremony, leaving Claire standing there feeling a very strange emotion. Not shame or defensiveness as she had earlier, but hope. Admitting her flawed assumptions had opened a door she hadn't even known existed. Daniel Brooks approached, extending his hand. That was a very meaningful gesture. "Thank you." Claire shook his hand firmly, responding sincerely. "Your daughter is incredible. I'm sure you're very proud." "We are very proud." Daniel nodded, his eyes shining with joy. "At first, we thought this was just an experience for Maya, but it turns out it's become a profound lesson for all of us, for you too." Claire smiled softly, whispering, "Yes, a lesson I needed more than ever." Daniel smiled gently. "In my class, I often remind my students, history isn't just about what has happened. It's also about recognizing the patterns that are quietly shaping the present, the assumptions we carry, often without even realizing it." Claire fell silent. "For 15 years, I've prided myself on being fair to every passenger," she said slowly. "But now I realize sometimes my idea of fairness wasn't fair at all." Recognizing that Daniel smiled is the beginning of growth, and it's never too late to start. Maya stepped up to the microphone, holding the note from her young ambassador's journal. Even though her voice was soft, the entire crowd immediately fell silent to listen. "When I go to fancy places with my parents, sometimes people don't see me," Maya began. "They talk over my head or act like I don't belong in places like fancy restaurants or museums. But I'm a person too, with thoughts, feelings, and questions about the world. I dream of a world where every child feels welcome, where no one has to prove they deserve to be in beautiful places. That's the world I want to help build with my role as Continental Airlines' first young ambassador." The simplicity and sincerity in Maya's words struck Claire Mitchell silent. She had spoken directly to the heart of what had happened that morning at Gate 27B. Claire had not truly seen Maya. She had subconsciously pushed the girl aside, simply because of the assumptions deeply rooted in her mind. The applause erupted across the room as Maya finished her speech. Jonathan Price turned back to the microphone and announced, "We will continue to expand the Young Ambassador program, selecting children from across the country to experience premium service and share their unique perspectives." And now, he continued, his eyes sparkling, "I invite Miss Claire Mitchell, the gate agent from Chicago, to present the honorary wings to Maya Brooks." Claire froze for a moment. This wasn't in the plan. Her heart raced as Jonathan handed her a small box, inside of which was a pair of golden wings similar to the Continental employee badge, but specially designed for children, engraved with the words, "Young Ambassador." Claire stepped forward, kneeling down to Maya's level. She knew dozens of cameras were pointing their lenses at them, and the eyes of Maya's parents were fixed on her. "Dear Mims," Brooks, Claire, spoke into the microphone, making sure her voice was clear. "On behalf of Continental Airlines, it is my honor to present you with these Young Ambassador wings. You have reminded us that seeing the world through fresh eyes is not just a journey of childhood, but a valuable lesson for all of us." Claire gently pinned the wings to Maya's dress, then extended her hand. "Thank you for teaching us how to look more closely, listen more attentively, and welcome every passenger with the respect they truly deserve." Maya shook Claire's hand with surprising seriousness for a child. Then, unexpectedly, she stepped forward and gave Claire a gentle hug. In that moment, the young girl whispered so quietly that the microphones didn't catch it. "Thank you for learning from your mistake." The sound of cameras clicking echoed through the room, capturing the image of the gate agent hugging the young ambassador, a moment that would later appear in all of Continental Airlines' training materials and media campaigns. As the ceremony concluded, Jonathan Price approached Claire. "Well done, Ms. Mitchell. That was very sincere." "That was the real emotion," Claire replied, surprised at how natural it had felt. "I truly meant it." Jonathan nodded, his gaze warmer than before. "Perhaps today's incident has more value than we initially thought. Claire, would you be willing to share this experience in the new diversity and inclusion training sessions when we return to Chicago?" Had it been the Claire of earlier that morning, she would have found a way to decline, citing being too busy or the situation not being suitable, but Claire was standing here now, the one who had just pinned the wings on Maya, and she nodded slowly. "Yes, sir. I think I'm ready." "Excellent." Real-life experience always holds more power than any dry lecture, Jonathan said, patting her gently on the shoulder. "And you've shown the courage necessary to face reality instead of avoiding it." Jonathan left to coordinate the next part of the ceremony, leaving Claire standing there feeling a very strange emotion. Not shame or defensiveness as she had earlier, but hope. Admitting her flawed assumptions had opened a door she hadn't even known existed. Daniel Brooks approached, extending his hand. That was a very meaningful gesture. "Thank you." Claire shook his hand firmly, responding sincerely. "Your daughter is incredible. I'm sure you're very proud." "We are very proud," Daniel nodded, his eyes shining with joy. "At first, we thought this was just an experience for Maya, but it turns out it's become a profound lesson for all of us, for you too." Claire smiled softly, whispering, "Yes, a lesson I needed more than ever." Daniel smiled gently. "In my class, I often remind my students, history isn't just about what has happened, it's also about recognizing the patterns that are quietly shaping the present, the assumptions we carry, often without even realizing it." Claire fell silent. For 15 years, "I've prided myself on being fair to every passenger," she said slowly. "But now I realize sometimes my idea of fairness wasn't fair at all." Recognizing that Daniel smiled is the beginning of growth, and it's never too late to start. That flight didn't just take Maya Brooks to San Francisco. It also took Claire Mitchell on a journey she never expected, a journey of discovering her own limits. A seemingly rule-following rejection exposed the invisible assumption she had carried for years in her work, that fairness isn't just about treating everyone equally, but about truly seeing each person with their own story. In Maya's disappointed eyes, Claire saw everything she had always avoided, and instead of turning away as she normally would this time, she faced it and chose to change. Maya's courage didn't lie in not knowing fear. It lay in the fact that, despite her fear, she stepped forward still believing that she deserved to be seen, to be heard, just like Claire, who dared to face her mistakes and learn how to love and respect the differences. 3 weeks later, in front of a hall full of colleagues, Claire stood there honestly telling them about her mistake. No blaming, no excuses, just a simple, sincere acknowledgement and a firm commitment to change. So stories like Maya's would never again go unspoken. The small painting Maya gave her, the drawing of a plane flying in the sky with passengers of all skin tones and ages, became a symbol for Claire's new journey. It reminded her every day that sometimes the moments of mistake are the very stepping stones that help us soar higher. And somewhere in the upcoming flights, there will be many more Maya's children who carry the dream of seeing themselves in spaces that have long been empty of their presence. And people like Claire with eyes that have learned to widen will be ready to embrace them, not just through procedures, but with open hearts. A world where everyone is welcomed is not a far-off dream. It's made up of small moments, simple choices we make every day. A compassionate gaze, a timely greeting, an opportunity to pass through the velvet ropes without doubt. Today's story ends here, but the journey of kindness and inclusiveness continues, and each of us in our small everyday encounters can help build that world. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel to spread more warm messages like this to many others. Don't forget to comment what part of this story moved you the most, so we can hear your thoughts. Thank you for joining us on this journey of seeing each other through eyes of love. See you in the next stories.